We have breaking news. A magnitude 7.3 earthquake struck off the coast of New Zealand at 13:27 UTC on Thursday. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center says an earthquake of this size has the potential to generate tsunami that can strike coastlines in the region near the epicenter. Turning now to Myanmar. Protests against the military takeover continued a day after the United Nations said 38 people were killed in the bloodiest crackdown since the February 1st coup. Demonstrators returned to the streets in the largest city of Yangon on Thursday. They built barricades with trash cans and other available materials to protect themselves from possible gunfire by security forces. On Wednesday, security forces opened fire on crowds in Yangon, the second largest city of Mandalay, and the central city of Monua. A witness in Yangon said police used machine guns against the demonstrators, causing a number of casualties.
Some security forces were firing guns from the roof of a vehicle. I was nearby, so I heard the shooting. They gave no warning. It looked like they were leaving, but they were shooting at the protesters while they were falling back.
Meanwhile, a funeral was held for 19-year-old Jae Sin, who was reportedly shot in the head during Wednesday's protest in Mandalay. Photos believed to be of Jae Sin at the protest went viral on social media after her death, accompanied by the slogan on her T-shirt that read, "Everything will be okay." Video footage taken by a man at the same demonstration shows protesters confronting security forces. Witnesses say authorities were using live ammunition and snipers to disperse the protesters.
When the authorities started firing, she was telling us to keep back and stay low. She was doing everything she could to help the protesters. I feel sad. She was too young. She was just 19. A lot of young people died yesterday.
Security authorities reportedly used tear gas and live ammunition to break up demonstrations in several places on Thursday, including Yangon, raising concerns about further casualties. Meanwhile, a group of students in Tokyo is calling on the Japanese government to support pro-democracy protests in Myanmar. Students learning the Burmese language at the Tokyo University of Foreign Studies presented a petition to the Foreign Ministry on Thursday. The petition, signed by over 38,000 people, asks Japan to urge Myanmar's military to halt its violent crackdown on protesters. It's also calling for the release of Aung San Suu Kyi and other detained leaders.
ミャンマーのそして国際社会の平和のためにご協力のほどよろしくお願いします。
A foreign ministry official pledged to undertake diplomatic efforts to improve the situation. The students also met with lawmakers from various parties to convey their concerns about the deteriorating situation. Japanese government officials are preparing to extend the state of emergency for Tokyo and its 3 neighboring prefectures by 2 weeks. The declaration was scheduled to end on Sunday, but will likely remain in place through March 21st. The number of new cases has been on the decline, but the downward trend has been slowing. On Thursday, Tokyo reported nearly 280 new infections. Kanagawa, Chiba, and Saitama prefectures each reported more than 100 new cases.
Tokyo shares the same view as the central government about extending the emergency declaration. We are taking the situation seriously.
The government will make a final decision after hearing from a panel of experts on Friday. Meanwhile, scientists at the Riken Research Institute have released results about how masks help prevent droplets from spreading. Supercomputer simulations show that when a person wears a mask made of non-woven fabric without properly fitting the nose wire, the mask only catches 69% of the droplets. When the same mask is properly fitted to minimize the gap, the mask catches 81% of the droplets. And when a person double layers with a urethane mask over a non-woven fabric mask, 89% of the drops are contained. The researchers say while double masking can potentially improve the protection rate by 10 to 20%, it's not necessarily better than wearing a single layer properly. While the Japanese Prime Minister says the state of emergency will likely be extended by about 2 weeks. With spring approaching and cases declining, some in the capital hoped coronavirus measures would be relaxed. But as we'll find out in our next report, an emerging threat has experts on edge.
It's been a year since the pandemic first cast its shadow over popular spring events, like picnicking under bright pink cherry blossoms. This year's outlook again seems dim. Soon, students will look toward another year's graduation with less than the usual pomp. Coronavirus measures may also affect an event to mark 10 years since a massive earthquake and tsunami devastated northeastern Japan. Since the current emergency was declared, daily cases have dropped from thousands a day to hundreds or even fewer. But experts say that doesn't show the whole picture.
We're continuously receiving reports of variant strains. There is a high risk of this bringing about a surge in infections.
This lab is looking into the problem. It's been testing people in Kobe for a coronavirus mutation first detected in the UK and now spreading here. The UK variant didn't turn up in hundreds of cases sampled in about the first 4 weeks of this year. But as overall cases went down, this new strain became more prevalent, growing from 8 cases a week to 11. Then it inched up to 12 cases, or 15% of the now smaller sample group. Just weeks after Japan started its vaccination campaign, worries about other variants are also growing. Strains found in South Africa and Brazil are considered highly contagious and have been reported in Japan. Studies suggest the mutations allow the virus to evade antibodies sent out to destroy it. And the efficacy of current vaccines on new strains remains unclear. Experts trying to fight the virus in Japan are looking to strengthen one of their key weapons, data.
There needs to be more testing in more parts of Japan in order to monitor the coronavirus variants. That's because they're more contagious, and there's a possibility they will spread in a big way.
With major events on the horizon, including the delayed Olympics, healthcare workers are now looking at faster ways to detect these variants.
Now to a deepening scandal involving Japan's communications ministry. A senior official who was recently disciplined for being entertained by a company the ministry oversees has acknowledged he was also wined and dined by telecom giant NTT. Vice Minister for Policy Coordination Taniwaki Yasuhiko was disciplined last month for being wined and dined by executives of a satellite broadcaster. The case dominated the headlines as the executives included Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide's son.
I would like to apologize and deeply reflect on the fact that I've made citizens have further doubts.
During the Diet session on Thursday, Taniwaki admitted he had meals with NTT officials a total of 3 times in 2018 and last year. He said the purpose of the meals was to exchange opinions, but failed to explain the details as the ministry is investigating the case.
As for the 3 dinners, I think I paid the price as requested by the host each time. I did not report them to the ministry because I didn't recognize the dinners breached the ethics code.
Prime Minister Suga said this to the Diet.
I understand the ministry is investigating the issues. I'll instruct them to thoroughly establish the facts according to the rules.
In a separate meeting in the Diet, the ministry official told opposition lawmakers that another senior official was also entertained by the company.
From the Abe to the Suga administration, The ethical decisions by bureaucrats may have been questionable. As the wining and dining issues came out from the Communications Ministry and the Agricultural Ministry, now investigations should be conducted at all ministries in the government.
The ministry officials say they'll thoroughly investigate the issue. The cost of a devastating fire at a World Heritage Site in Japan has become clear. Much of Shuri Castle in the southern prefecture of Okinawa burned down in 2019. NHK has learned the damage is estimated at $49 million. The fire destroyed 6 buildings, including the main hall, and damaged 2 others. Officials at the local fire department calculated the cost. They took into account the original cost of construction and the number of years the buildings stood until the fire. NHK asked them to disclose their figures. They said the damage to the buildings comes to about $47 million. They said damage to artifacts totals about $1.9 million. Shuri Castle stood on the underground ruins of a castle built more than 500 years ago. The original castle was built by the Ryukyu Kingdom, which later became part of Japan. The Japanese government plans to start rebuilding the main hall next year and finish by 2026. Sea ice has been covering parts of the Sea of Okhotsk, bringing a beautiful sight to the coasts of Hokkaido. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori joins us now with the details.
Hello there. Ice originated from Russia moved southward, reaching the coast of Hokkaido. Drift ice moving southward in Okhotsk Sea was spotted in Monbetsu on Wednesday. An icebreaker, Garinkogo, drifted over the icy water. The ice reached other coastal cities in Hokkaido as well. In Nemuro, this is 20 days later than usual and 3 days earlier than last year. It's the 5th latest observation on record. The northerly winds helped push the ice south. Hokkaido is the northern hemisphere's southernmost place to see drift ice. Then we have another system already approaching the west. We are seeing heavy rainfall in western Japan already. Heavy rain will likely continue into Friday. There is a possibility of thunderstorms and hail across the west. And then it'll creep over Japan towards the east. Tokyo will see rainfall during the weekend, but it'll stay dry at least on your Friday. The daytime high will be in the double digits. It'll be more like spring. It'll be more like April for Tokyo, but rainy weather and cooler conditions expected during the weekend. Meanwhile, let's go to the other parts of the world, especially Europe. There is a big difference, temperature difference. We have cold air in the north that is moving down southward into the weekend. So temperatures are going to be below freezing in Moscow, down to the single digits in Kyiv. And Athens will see 19 degrees, but parts of Italy will see cooler conditions during the weekend. Now let's go to Australia. There is a cyclone called Niran. This system is moving away from Australia. The next target is going to be the Pacific Island, especially New Caledonia. You could be directly hit by Niran. It is expected to maintain its intensity as a Category 3 when it hits the island. So be careful of stormy conditions during the weekend. That's it for me. Have a nice day.
Italy's become the first country to ban the export of coronavirus vaccines under new EU guidelines. It stopped a shipment to Australia of 1 million doses of the locally manufactured AstraZeneca jab. Meghan Markle has accused the royal family of perpetuating falsehoods about her and Prince Harry. The Duchess of Sussex says she's not afraid of the consequences of speaking out. The UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar says the crackdown on protesters after last month's military coup requires a strong international response. He appealed to the UN Security Council to impose an arms embargo and targeted sanctions on the military. And the US National Guard is being asked to protect the Capitol building in Washington for another 2 months. There are continuing security concerns following the assault on the Capitol in January.